Hey, hi, hello, sub 10ms time. This guide is for those who are already familiar with the basic core mechanics of sword PvP, such as jump resetting, comboing, S-holding, etc. In case you're not familiar with the basic mechanics and techniques, I'll link the PvP guide Discord in the description. Also, there's a good chance I'll miss something, so feel free to comment or let me know if I do.
Alright, hi, it's me, Veronique. Later on in the video, I'll be talking about a few no-KB techniques, like jump resets, peak crits, S crits, etc. So yeah, I'll just be showing you guys what they look like and what they are.
Most of you probably already know this, but there are advantages and disadvantages that come with pretty much every ping. Assuming that the player's connection to the server is stable, sub 10ms players will have their packets registered by the server almost instantly, and thus naturally have an advantage when it comes to fast-paced gameplay and getting first hits. However, the drawback to having packets registered almost instantly is that the player will also take knockback with little to no delay. This is why sub 10ms players should do everything they can to avoid getting knocked backwards during fights, as it is far easier to be crippled than most other pings. In actual fights, however, it is almost impossible not to get hit during fights, especially if the opponent's connection to the server is delayed. As a countermeasure to this scenario, I usually stun my opponents with pick hits as a means to kill their momentum. The logic behind this is that if you were to lose an encounter and get pushed back, for example, let's say stunning your opponent with a pick hit would prevent them from getting a major advantage by rushing towards you and getting even more hits in. I should mention that performing this technique does require a bit of timing and practice, because mistiming a pick hit will just reset your attack cooldown and let your opponent get an advantage. Obviously, every player will be unique in some way, shape, or form. This is why I don't necessarily like it when people rely solely on their opponent's ping to determine how delayed their knockback would be. For example, two players can have similar pings but seemingly take different amounts of knockback due to factors such as having an unstable internet and how well they perform techniques that reduce how far they get knocked backwards. In my opinion, players' numerical pings should only be used as a starting point to gauge your opponent. To account for this unpredictability, I usually like to spend the first few rounds learning about my opponents rather than simply going for the win. The only times I think that skipping this process and immediately going in for the win instinctively is worth it are when you know that your opponent will likely identify your strengths and weaknesses before you can, or when you're confident that you only need to react to your opponent reflexively in order to win. Personally, whenever I fight someone competitively, I always like to abide by the following two-step thought process. Do they take much KB? If so, then prioritize dealing as much knockback to your opponent in the hopes of getting a combo off. If not, almost solely go for crits whilst using sprint hits to support them. What are you better at them at? Try to shift the fight in a way that will put you in a situation where you can best utilize your strengths. Identifying your opponent's strengths is also a good habit to have, but in most situations, you should be prioritizing using your strengths to the best of your ability rather than making it difficult for your opponents to play. Of course, ideally, it would be incredible to do both at the same time. Though playing instinctively can be a short-term solution sometimes, I believe learning how to analyze both yourself and your opponent is much more worthwhile, especially when you're first starting out. Finally, as a sub 10 MS player, you should consistently be able to pull off no KB techniques or know when to back away to avoid a combo. The latter can pretty much only be done through experience, but I guess a decent analogy would be to almost ride the wave when getting knocked backwards. Also, fights between two sub 10 MS players are almost always decided by who is more consistent at pulling off 3 block hits. If your opponent is better than you at hitting 3-block hits, then a potential solution would be to either solely go for a hit select after pulling off an OKB technique, or to shift the battle in a way that your opponent will be forced to concentrate more on aiming rather than hitting 3-block hits. You can do this by strafing unpredictably or learning when to hold shift to dodge your opponent's attack. If your opponent can overpower you in both spacing and aiming, then I'm sorry, you're cooked. I'm gonna wrap things up now because I want to do other stuff, but I'll link some useful mods that I use to help me space 3 blocks. Thanks for watching. Peace.